So imagine sitting across from, well, a mentor you trust with your absolute life,
Yes,
right?
someone you completely rely on.
Exactly. And they look you dead in the eye and tell you that a completely devastating grief is coming your way. But they don't just stop there.
Which is already a pretty tough pill to swallow.
Right. But then they add that while you're suffering, the rest of the world is going to, like, throw a parade and actively celebrate your pain.
It's a total psychological gut punch.
It really is.
Yeah.
Welcome to today's Deep Dive, everyone. Today is Friday, May 15th, 2026, falling right within the 6th week of Eastertide.
A very fitting time for this discussion.
Definitely. And today, we are unpacking the exact moment Jesus delivered this kind of whiplash to his disciples. We're looking at the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verses 20 through 23a.
It's such a heavy, emotionally complex passage.
Yeah, because in the exact same breath that he promises this nightmare, he promises that on the other side of it, you will possess a joy so absolute that no one can ever take it away from you.
Which, sounds impossible when you're facing that kind of darkness.
Exactly. Like, how do we even begin to hold those two extremes together?
Well, we really have to step into the atmosphere of the room where this was actually said. We are right in the middle of the farewell discourse.
Right, the Last Supper.
Exactly. It's the Last Supper. Jesus is speaking to his closest followers just, hours before his arrest and crucifixion.
So the tension must have been just unbelievable.
Oh, the anxiety in that room is already suffocating. He has been telling them he's leaving, and they are basically grasping at straws trying to understand where he's going.
And then he drops this massive prophecy right into the center of their panic.
Yeah, he says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice."
Wow.
He is drawing this massive, unbridgeable line between the internal devastation the disciples are about to experience and the external reaction of the society around them.
That stark contrast is just brutal. Weeping while others rejoice. It's one thing to suffer in silence or, like, with a supportive community.
Right. Shared trauma is one thing.
Yeah, but it's a completely different psychological torment to suffer while your enemies pop champagne.
It really is.
Forget the cliche of, looking at social media and feeling sad while everyone else's life looks perfect. This is magnified.
Magnified by 1,000, yeah.
It's more like watching a deeply corrupt political faction or some ruthless corporate rival completely destroy everything you've built, and then watching them throw a massive public victory parade.
Yeah, your utter devastation isn't just ignored, it's the punchline to their success.
Exactly. So why does Jesus explicitly map out the world's reaction for them? Telling them they'll be sad makes sense.
Sure, managing expectations.
But telling them they will be the butt of a cosmic joke while everyone else wins seems like it would just break their spirit ahead of time. Is he intentionally trying to induce this whiplash?
Well, no, it's actually the opposite. Removing the element of surprise is one of the most critical psychological survival tactics we have.
Really? How so?
In the study of trauma and resilience, we know that the most damaging aspect of a traumatic event is often the chaos of it.
The feeling that things are just completely out of control.
Exactly. The feeling that something unnatural is happening, that you are entirely alone, and that reality has just fundamentally broken.
Right, okay.
So by explicitly stating, the world will rejoice, Jesus is actually validating the intense alienation they are going to experience before the hammer even falls.
Oh, wow. So he is giving them like a cognitive anchor.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
When the Roman guards are mocking them and the crowds are cheering the crucifixion, instead of internalizing that and thinking, oh no, we were fools, we chose the wrong side.
Right, instead of doubting everything.
They can grab onto the anchor and think, wait, he mapped this exact territory for us.
Yeah.
This is supposed to happen.
That cognitive anchor transforms their isolation. If you are going through a massive defeat and your enemies are cheering, your brain's default mechanism is to assume you've lost.
Yeah, obviously.
But Jesus is rewiring that mechanism in real time. He's framing their sorrow not as a failure, but as an expected, necessary phase of a much larger process.
So the cheering of the world actually becomes confirmation that Jesus was telling the truth.
Exactly. It takes the weapon of public mockery out of the hands of the authorities and turns it into an attack of Jesus's foresight.
That is mind-blowing. But if you are told this level of isolation is coming, you need more than just a warning.
Right. You need a survival mechanism.
Yeah, you need to know the pain isn't just some random sadistic punishment. Which I guess is why Jesus immediately has to explain what this agonizing recognizing sorrow is actually accomplishing.
Yeah, and he brings in the concept of labor. He introduces what is arguably the most vivid, universal analogy for necessary suffering.
The metaphor of childbirth.
Right. He says when a woman is giving birth, she has sorrow because her hour has come, but when she has delivered the baby, she no longer remembers the anguish for joy that a human being has been born into the world.
Okay, I have to pause on the phrasing here because we really need to parse the difference between poetic language and literal reality.
Oh, absolutely.
He says, the mother no longer remembers the anguish. Now, anyone who has given birth or, held the hand of someone in a delivery room knows the bodily trauma of that experience does not just magically wipe from the brain.
Yeah, it's not the Men in Black memory erasure.
Right. It is a profound, searing physical reality. So I really want to push back on this idea of forgetting.
That's a really fair pushback.
Is Jesus implying a literal amnesia here? Or is there like a deeper mechanism at play regarding how human beings process pain when it results in something valuable?
The pushback is crucial because reading this as literal neurological amnesia totally misses the psychological brilliance of the metaphor.
Okay, so what is the brilliance?
Jesus is highlighting the difference between meaningless suffering and generative pain.
Generative pain.
Yeah. Think about breaking your leg in a car accident versus the pain of running a marathon, or in this case, the agony of childbirth.
A broken leg is just chaos. It's an interruption of life.
Exactly. But generative pain is intrinsically tied to the creation of something new. When he says she no longer remembers the anguish, he's pointing out that the pain ceases to be the defining narrative of the event.
Ah, I see. So the outcome completely eclipses the trauma.
Right.
The suffering loses its power to terrorize her memory because the suffering was essentially the exact currency required to purchase the new life.
That is exactly the mechanism. The joy of holding the child doesn't just, sit next to the memory of the pain on a shelf. It retroactively changes the meaning of the pain.
The sorrow doesn't just vanish into thin air.
No, it actively metabolizes into joy. Every contraction, every moment of agony is suddenly understood as the necessary vehicle that brought this profound happiness into existence.
So Jesus is taking the upcoming trauma of the crucifixion and telling the disciples, look, this is not a car accident. This is a delivery room.
This is a delivery room, yes, that completely reorients the horror of what they are about to witness.
Their grief over watching their friend be tortured and executed is the labor required for the birth of the resurrection.
Exactly. Without the devastation of Good Friday, there is no empty tomb on Easter Sunday. Human beings have a staggering capacity to endure suffering if they believe it has meaning.
Yeah, psychologists say meaningless suffering is what really shatters the human psyche.
Right, like Viktor Frankl talked about. By mapping their grief onto the process of childbirth, Jesus is injecting their upcoming trauma with a profound, life-giving purpose.
Their weeping isn't the tragic finale. It's the bloody, exhausting birth of a completely new reality.
Which brings us right out of the metaphor and back into the upper room. Jesus moves from the hypothetical mother directly to what the disciples will get to hold on to once their labor is complete.
Yeah, he says, so also, you have sorrow now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you.
Notice the shift there from the circumstantial to the relational.
What do you mean?
Well, the sorrow they have now is tied to the circumstances of his death, but the joy he promises is not tied to a change in political climate or a reversal of their social fortunes.
It's tied entirely to a person.
Yes, I will see you again. The reunion is the source of the joy.
I really want to dig into this concept of an untouchable joy because, it sounds beautiful in a theological vacuum.
But practically,
Practically, it's a very difficult pill to swallow. He says no one will take your joy from you. But in our normal human experience, joy is like the most fragile emotion we possess.
it really is.
Our happiness depends on our physical health, our bank accounts, or honestly, just whether someone cuts us off in traffic. It is constantly vulnerable to external forces.
Very true. So how does a person maintain this state of joy when they still have to wake up the next day and face Roman persecution? If you're being hunted, your nervous system doesn't care about theology.
And that disconnect between theology and survival is exactly what the early church had to navigate. It requires us to separate happiness from the joy Jesus is describing.
Okay, break that down for me.
Happiness is circumstantial. It's a biological and emotional response to things going well. If your happiness is tied to money, a market crash takes it. If it's tied to health, a diagnosis takes it.
Right.
But the joy promised here is not a mood. It is a state of existential security rooted in an event that has already conquered the ultimate threat.
Because the ultimate threat is death.
Exactly.
And if the person you are reunited with has already died and returned, then the leverage of death is just broken.
That's the exact mechanism I'm pointing toward. The systems of power, the world control people through the threat of violence and death.
But if your joy is anchored to a resurrected relationship, what can the Roman Empire actually do to you? Right. The worst they can do is kill you. And the resurrection proves that death is not the end of the story.
So the joy is untouchable because the source of the joy has already survived the worst the world can inflict.
It creates a psychological armor. You can be terrified, your nervous system can be in fight or flight, but beneath all of that physiological noise is an unshakable bedrock conviction that your ultimate reality is completely secure.
Wow. That reframes everything about how we view those who suffer profound injustice but maintain their faith. It's not that they are walking around with this serene, happy smile while being oppressed.
No, not at all.
It's that their foundational reality just cannot be touched by the oppressor.
Which perfectly sets up the final and frankly most mysterious line of this passage.
Right. Jesus says, "In that day you will ask nothing of me." I have been turning this over and over, trying to wrap my head around it.
It's a tricky one.
Does this mean they will suddenly become omniscient? Like the resurrection happens and they just get a cosmic download of all theological answers?
No, I don't think it's about omniscience. To understand this, we have to look at the mechanics of human anxiety and desire. Why do we ask questions in the first place?
Because we don't know the answers.
Right. We ask because we are confused, we lack information, and we are trying to predict the future to keep ourselves safe. Why do we ask for favors or resources?
Because we lack them.
Exactly. Every time we ask for something, whether it's a question or a petition, we are operating out of a state of deficit. We're missing something, and that absence creates anxiety.
Yeah. Our entire human operating system is basically based on identifying what we lack and trying to acquire it.
Precisely.
We are constantly asking for reassurance, for clarity. We're hungry, so we ask for food. We're scared, so we ask for a map.
Yes, and contrast that baseline human condition with the specific state of the disciples in that upper room. Throughout the farewell discourse, they are constantly interrupting Jesus, asking panicked questions.
Where are you going? How can we know the way? Show us the Father.
Their nervous systems are in absolute overdrive. They are asking constantly because they are terrified of the lack they're about to experience when he leaves.
I see. So when he says, "In that day you will ask nothing of me," he isn't saying you won't have any more theological curiosities.
Right.
He is saying the fundamental deficit driving your panic will be permanently filled.
Exactly. The physical and spiritual presence of the resurrected Christ rewrites the nervous system's need to constantly scan the horizon for threats or missing pieces.
It's a portrait of perfect communion.
It really is. When you are entirely full, you don't ask for a meal. When you are in the arms of the person you love most and you know you are completely safe, the frantic need to ask what happens next just evaporates.
The presence of Christ resolves the underlying existential anxiety that causes the questioning in the first place.
It's the difference between needing an instruction manual and having the engineer sitting right next to you.
You don't need to ask for the blueprint if the builder's literally holding your hand. That shifts the ultimate goal of the spiritual life from getting all the answers to simply being in the presence.
It really changes everything.
Let's pull all these threads together and look at the extraordinary journey we've mapped out in this deep dive. We started with that bracing dose of reality, the sheer visceral devastation of weeping while a hostile world throws a party at your expense.
And how Jesus mapped that territory so they wouldn't be destroyed by the shock.
Right. Then we moved into the delivery room, discovering how the metaphor of childbirth radically redefines suffering. It isn't random chaos. It's the generative, exhausting labor required to pull a new reality into existence.
A profoundly hopeful reframing.
And finally, we arrived at the promise of the resurrection, a reunion that grants an untouchable existential joy. A joy so complete that the frantic, anxious human need to constantly ask for reassurance simply falls away.
It's an incredible trajectory from the depths of despair to the heights of eternal security. And, it speaks directly to the gritty, unvarnished reality of the human experience. We all go through our own periods of weeping and lamenting.
We really do, often feeling entirely isolated in the process. And that is exactly what I want to leave you, our listener, thinking about today.
It's an important question to ask.
When you find yourself in a season of intense grief, sorrow, or profound isolation, how do you frame that experience in your own mind? Is it possible to look at your current pain, the injustice you might be facing, the loss you are carrying, and view it not as a permanent destination, but as a difficult, exhausting labor.
Can you dare to trust that this pain is actually the raw material being used to birth a new, unshakable joy in your life?
Choosing to frame our struggles through that generative lens doesn't make the pain hurt any less in the moment. The contractions of life are still agonizing, but it gives us the meaning required to survive them without losing our minds. It gives the pain a purpose.
It absolutely does.
And before we close, I want to offer you one final provocative thought to sit with, building on that mysterious promise we just discussed.
About asking nothing.
Yeah. We talked about how the ultimate joy Jesus promises results in a state where we ask nothing of him. If that is true, does that imply that our constant human curiosity, our burning ambitions, our endless desires, and our restless questioning are really just symptoms of our current separation from the divine?
Oh, that's a deep question.
Right. And that maybe true, complete presence doesn't just answer all our millions of questions, but actually extinguishes our restless wanting altogether. It's a fascinating paradigm shift to explore on your own.
It gives you a lot to chew on.
It really does. To bring our deep dive to a close today, I'd like to offer a short prayer directly related to the powerful passage from John's Gospel that we've been unpacking. Lord Jesus, when we face times of weeping and lamentation, and when the world seems to rejoice in our sorrow, remind us of the childbirth that brings new life. Give us the endurance to weather the labor pains of this world. Comfort us in our grief, and fulfill your promise to turn our temporary sorrow into a lasting, untouchable joy in your presence, a joy that no one can ever take from us. Amen.